What's today all about? Well, we're really excited to have Sarah Marshall and Jamie Pearson with us today. You'll know from our invitation that the topic for today's roundtable is resisting the mindset trap. And the subheading we gave to that was how to unbox technical functions to drive innovation across pharma organizations worldwide. So that's what we're set up to do today. Sarah and Jamie, if you don't know them, they're authors of the High Five series that's published on LinkedIn at the moment, and hopefully many of you are already subscribed to it. And if you aren't subscribed, hopefully you will be soon. And maybe you've had an opportunity to read some of their pieces on a couple of the links that we send out. Their goal is to help people who are making the same move that they did to in-house legal, just ultimately to make it a little bit easier for them. They'll tell you, I'm sure, about their own journey. They want to share some of their stories and experiences, and ultimately they're on a journey to help elevate the role that lawyers can play in the business. In their High Five series, they've already talked about being a trusted advisor and the challenge of developing executive presence. And I'm sure there's loads more to come. For those of you that don't know Sarah and Jamie, just quickly, Sarah has worked in law firms in New Zealand and London before moving in-house with Shire. She now lives in Switzerland and has worked for Alexion for the last 7 years, where she now heads up the international legal function. And that's where Sarah and Five&Co, that's where we first met when we started to do some work with Sarah and the legal team there. Jamie also started in private practice and then made a move in-house to Shire, where he and Sarah met, and he's now general counsel at Genomics, a biotech startup. I'll hand over to Sarah and Jamie now. They're going to just give us a brief introduction to their thinking, their view, and some of the thoughts that they've been sharing in their High Five series. Anything that comes up, questions, thoughts, comments, drop it on the chat. And after Sarah and Jamie have given us a short presentation, I'll be opening up a conversation for us where hopefully we can all get involved and think more about the challenge and the thoughts that Jamie and Sarah have given us. So without any further ado, Jamie, Sarah, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick, for the very kind invitation, and thank all of you for turning up today. It's really exciting for us to talk about some of these ideas we've been throwing out there into the interwebs with actual people. So we really appreciate the interest, and we're going to hopefully keep things interesting for you. So I wanted to mention I have been working with Five&Co in relation to a legal leadership development program for the Alexion global legal team. And I'll talk a bit about how that's been one of the tools that's, I think, helping my team resist a little bit of this mindset trap. But first of all, what is this mindset trap that we're banging on about? It's really the idea that lawyers and other technical experts should get in that little box and stay right there. And we see the lawyers themselves putting themselves into that box, and we see the business partners putting themselves into that box. But on the other hand, we see general counsels and chief legal officers being celebrated and lauded as business leaders and enterprise leaders. But we never think about so much, how do we bridge that gap between that boxed up junior technical expert and that general counsel who's seen as the crisis manager or cool head or close advisor to the board and CEO? Jamie and I believe that it starts with early career development for in-house lawyers on business leadership topics, helping them to be enterprise leaders at their level throughout their careers.
So, hello everyone, and thanks for listening to both of us bang on about this. The one point I just want to make before I start going through bullet points, and there aren't too many, you'll be relieved to know, is that there isn't really much informal support of in-house lawyers, we both feel. There's stuff that some law firms do, and I think we're starting to see the emergence, and I can see Claire Debney's joined, of companies like Five&Co and the Mosaic Collective, who try to develop sort of people's leadership while they're in work while they're working as in-house lawyers, which is very important. But as to whether the profession, which is quite a closed, uncommunicative in terms of career development, and may I say slightly competitive one, could do more, we think it probably could. We're just doing this to see whether there's appetite for it in some very gentle ways. We think it's important because it makes lawyers happier. Sarah and I think probably originally bonded when we both realised that the job could be fun. It could be fun, and there was all sorts of opportunities to look at what different teams are doing to help them, to help them with their strategic decisions, and to help people who were a bit less experienced in the journey up the greasy pole of career development. We also think maybe managers could do a little more. Sarah and I also have some common experience, and I'm sure you all have some experiences as well, of annual review conversations that maybe aren't as helpfully specific as they could be. You might have asked about promotion and been told, well, you really need to think about what you could do to make that happen, and the conversation not really going any further. Certainly some people fit into both categories. Some people are managers and, you know, lawyers who just want to develop their skills. But lawyers too often are probably seen as technical experts, and maybe not always, unless you're a very enlightened business leader, as people who can really help progress the business and improve what they're doing. So anyway, back to the annual reviews. We are going to take a little foray into Sarah Marshall's annual review, circa 2009, and just see how that was going for her. Sarah, I'm delighted you can make it, and you know, you can clearly handle the work, so well done. But in answer to your question about promotion, I think you need to think about being more strategic.
Huh?
Now we're going to move on to my very own annual review in 2009 and see how that was going.
Jamie, yeah, great year, Jamie. Great year, Jamie. But you know, sometimes, Jamie, you know, there's something about how you're turning up in these meetings. I can't put my finger on it, but I think what you need is you just need to develop some executive presence.
I don't know what that means. Okay, we're going to flip back to Sarah's 2009 annual review now. Sarah, I love the work on detail. It's, you know, fantastic. You're clearly technically brilliant, but, you know, I would say to you, if you really want to pursue this promotion development thing, you're going to need to get out of the weeds. Although I want you in the weeds as well.
In the weeds, out of the weeds, what are the weeds? Jamie, great year, Jamie, but you know, you need to take the next step forward, and in doing so, you really need to become a trusted advisor to the business.
Okay. So our reaction to all of these things that we heard quite a lot in our youth, or in our legal career youth, obviously we're both still very young, would be, I don't know what they're talking about. What is that? And what could you give me some ideas? Sarah, I think next slide.
Sure.
Right?
So we've been thinking a lot about what we can do on the supply side of the legal services to try and get out of this mindset trap. So encouraging technical experts to embrace enterprise leadership. And I've done two things in recent experience, and one I referred to already, which was the Alexion Legal Leadership Program, really focused on broadening the mindset of Alexion lawyers to think about how they can work with the business better, really tailored to the specific role of the in-house lawyer in Alexion as it was then in a time of transition, and trying to enable people to put some meat on the bones of advice like learn to hold the room. Well, how do I do that in the function as a lawyer? What does it mean to have executive presence as a lawyer when I need to explain technical things in a way that the business will understand, day in, day out, over and over again? So a really specific and focused leadership program that also set up small peer groups where people could connect with each other and develop alongside each other. So that was really, really helpful as a starting point for getting people out of that mindset that they're there to give some legal advice, no more, and no one wants to hear anything else from them. Another thing that we've done, which I think is a great step towards bridging that gap to enterprise leadership from technical expertise, is to take some time to define the essential work of our team. The team is crushed by an overwhelming workload. So there are a number of things that we could stop doing. They simply weren't legal work. They were not strategic. They were not supporting business opportunities. They were not necessarily addressing business risks. So taking that opportunity to really think about where can we, in the best way possible, add value to this business in a manner that's interesting and fun and strategic, and not the sort of long chain of reviews. So we're doing some stuff on the supply side, but we want to hear what the demand side is willing to do to bring these technical experts in and broaden their experience at the table.
And that really is the gist of what we're trying to do with High Five. I'll provide a link to it in the chat, or a link to one of the posts in the chat. But there's about 5 or 6 of them now, and it's us trying to break down things like being a strategic presence, being a trusted advisor, get out of the weeds. We try and break it down so that someone reading it might go away with a few ideas about how they can concretely start doing those things. And I guess what we might be interested in from you guys is whether the business thinks that's a good idea. If you're from a business, what your take on it is as a lawyer or as a compliance officer, and what your experiences are. Probably that's the most interesting thing, as a junior in your field, of having those types of conversations. And has it improved a little bit?
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Sarah. Let's open up a bit of conversation around this now. So in terms of what I've heard you say, there are some challenges for the more junior lawyer here in the way that you've pitched it, for them to cut through and do some of those things that others in the organization want them to do. Become more of a trusted advisor, get out the weeds, show more executive presence, be more strategic, hold the room, etc. Those are things that maybe they don't teach you in law school, but are expected of you when you start working in-house. And I suppose the same would be true for many other technical functions in an in-house environment as well, whether it's HR, whether it's technology, whether it's compliance, whatever else. So if that's your pitch, how much of that responsibility lies with the, and we'll take the junior lawyer as the example, how much of that lies with the junior lawyer versus how much of that lies with the business? Now, I suppose, Sarah, that speaks to your supply side, demand side point, right? So where do you feel that responsibility lies? Who wants to take that first? Sarah, do you want to pick that up?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. Thanks, Nick. I think that's really a shared responsibility, but we can only start with our functions, so we've gone part of the way. But I think it's also not the responsibility necessarily of the individual junior lawyer. It's really for leaders and managers to role model that kind of business partnership, to enable the opportunities to engage in that different way. To pull people out of those, technical boxes, and to basically what we're saying is put some meat on the bones of these generic pieces of advice. Instead of saying you need to learn the business, give somebody 3 things that they could do right away to learn the business. You know, join the
So be
quarterly
really
results
specific with
call.
them.
Yeah, get
Right.
some information about the sales in your area. Talk to this person about the science in relation to that product. Talk to that person about this other issue. But just being more concrete with that kind of advice.
And I think there's also an element, Sarah, as well, of having conversations with people at a very basic level. If you've got a good rapport with your manager, or as a manager you've got a good rapport with your direct report, just have those conversations where you're saying, do you know where you might want to go next? And which parts of the company or which parts of the work that you're doing at the moment do you really like, and which parts of the work scare you? And are there things that scare you but you like, or are there things that you don't like and find really easy and don't really want to do? I think that's a really good starting point as well, and it hopefully shows people that you're interested in their development as well.
Because I suppose on one hand, the buyers of the service internally, they just want good legal advice, don't they? But are you saying they want more than that as well?
I think the good ones know that it's very useful. So I asked an outside counsel a question yesterday, and it had nothing to do with the law, but I really wanted her answer because she's a really intelligent person that I trust. It has nothing to do with her area of specialism. And I think in a way there's a key there. Sarah and I were talking about this the other day. There's a key to how lawyers can be additionally useful to the business. You know, we tend to get to know the business pretty well. We're a little bit detached from it. Sometimes that, you know, is something that they view as a minus. But I think as committed, intelligent people, we might have a useful view.
Perish the thought. No, absolutely. Completely. And I think, so what I'm hearing you saying is you can be a great lawyer and add some value